This video is sponsored by Skillshare. Did anyone else get to that scene in Act 2 of Baldur's Gate, like...
Our Lady of Silver, hear me. The night song is no more. I am resplendent.
I am indomitable. I knew immediately, I had to cosplay Dame Aylin. But, dear Mood Maiden, look at this reference. Oh goodness, she is detailed. Not only that, but her wings. They are glorious and giant, and they open and close. And you know what? I could do that. Making a moving centaur wasn't enough apparently. I'm gonna make moving wings too. So this video is gonna cover the first part of my Dame Aylin build, her giant articulated feathered wings. And good news, this entire cosplay is sponsored by Lumen's Workshop. In fact, they are sponsoring the next 12 months of all of my cosplay. And they have sent me everything that I could possibly need for Dame Aylin. Unfortunately, not a ton of the materials are going to go into the wings specifically, but I will still put them in the description down below so you can get yourself some cosplay materials. You will certainly see a lot more of Lumen Workshop's materials when I go into the rest of Dame Aylin's build with all that armor. But that's later. Right now, we fly.
Okay, I know I said let's fly, but what I really meant was let's lie on the floor and make your spouse trace your body outline. I'm doing this to start the wings pattern. This is the easiest way for me to visualize the size of the wings compared to my own proportions.
Did you get the floor? Did you go on the floor?
Nope.
My arm looks really short too. My head looks small. Damn.
Yeah, you have a small head.
My proportions are fucked up, babe.
Much more exciting in other languages. Zap, potato.
The rough outline is sketched with a red Sharpie, and then I went back in with black once I was confident with the size and shape. And the entire time I was referencing her character model. Then I lie back down again to check to make sure I like it, and it's time for bones. I want these wings to move realistically. Well, as realistic as a D&D ASMR's real wings would be. So I made myself a paper mock-up with poster board and push pins. I have zero experience in engineering or moving parts, unless you count the centaur cosplay. So this tiny step was so helpful when leveling up to the real thing afterwards. You can see how the wing bones extend to their full height, hopefully by a pulley system, and then they will sit folded when in a relaxed position. At this point I hadn't yet figured out how the actual pulleys were going to work. Only that I wanted to be able to pull a rope in a downward motion at my back in order for these wings to open fully. Using my teeny tiny mock-up as a guide and my giant paper pattern, let's get to making some measurements for my wing bones. I am making measurements and using a ruler, but let me just be very clear, I have no idea what I'm doing. I have my pattern, and I have my measurements, and I have my PVC pipe. But before I just dove right into making this skeleton frame, I wanted to think of a way to make these wings removable from the harness. So in my diagram, these wings are attached to this plate, which would be the harness. I have made wings before, but I can't just use the same technique as last time because the articulation in these new Dame Aylin wings proves to be a little bit more of an issue. Here is the harness and back plate for my Iron Inquisitor Kale cosplay. This costume actually has 2 sets of wings, so 4 total. But it was a lot simpler because I could just insert the PVC pipe directly into here and just go whoop, and they stayed there. That was it. The PVC pipe that runs vertically right here, the part that would be attached to the back plate, is going to have these bars in it that allow for the articulation. And this bar won't let me just insert it into a little PVC pipe holder. I am still going to be using a lot of the same techniques that I did use to make this kill harness. I have an extra piece of this cincher board left over from when I made this. This is just like a nice super sturdy plastic. I'm going to use the same backpack structure too. It's just over the arms, and then this strap buckles at my ribs. I want to make this. I want to make my articulated skeleton. I want to start seeing it move, big wing move. I want to see the big thing happen. But I feel like it'll just be a waste of my time if I don't figure this out first. Because I might just have to redo stuff or undo it or whatever. I'm gonna go stare at my computer and see if I can figure this out. Okay, I think I actually solved my problem pretty easily, and that's just to add a second pole next to the support pole. So this one will slide like into the back plate. Yeah, this one will still be like free and off to the side and still be able to move like this. And this guy will be stuck in the back plate. And then I can just take it out and take it on and off. I think that'll work. I'm really stoked because that is a much simpler solution than all the shit that was going on in my head earlier. Again, with the measurements, girl, you're not fooling anyone. We all know you have a -1 to your intelligence score. It's my favorite dump stat. These wing bones to not be too bulky, I decided to flatten every piece of PVC pipe by heating it up and then stepping on it with a big shelf. Once it cools, this is nice and flat. Please remember to wear a respirator when heating up PVC pipe. This stuff does release toxic fumes. I'm pretty sure that's not how you use power tools. What on earth is this technique? Anyways, time to make marks for my machine screws and nuts. Screws are the real star of the show here, and they are the magic behind these rotating joints of my wing frame. Let's finally assemble my frame. Like I said, all those fancy numbers and measurements, I didn't know what I was doing. They were all for naught, because after assembly... So my wing is not working, and I think it just means my measurements are wrong. So let me show you. You can see it stretches out really far, but it does not collapse into a nice little folded wing. I'm going to do some new measurements and drill some new holes. And my technique right now is I'm just winging it. I'm not actually doing any math. So if I have to do math, I will be very upset. I don't want to do math. Incorrect. Drilling techniques, round 2. Getting close to running out of PVC pipe at this point, so I was really praying that this second round of measurements were gonna work. Lucky me, just sort of making it up continues to be a perfectly valid cosplay technique. Alrighty, I kind of figured it out. It took a couple of tries and I had to drill a lot more holes in this frame, but I think I like the range of motion now. See? Eh? As you can tell, I'm gonna have to trim some of these PVC pipes down. It does fold about as far as I would like it to fold, but the top bone does clack and interfere with the other part of the frame. So I'm gonna have to sort of install like a stopgap up here so it stops like maybe like around there and doesn't completely collapse. Yeah, it's a little awkward. That's all right. And I also don't want it to stretch out this far because the thing I have to keep in mind is that this pole is going to be attached vertically into a slot in my back about here, and that means these wings are going to be just a little bit too tall. So I'm going to have a stopgap so it extends about that far, I think, and then collapses to that small. So it didn't work the first time around, but it did work the second time. And I didn't have to do any extra math. I just looked at my little model and I wung it, pun intended. Oh, and the other thing I have to test is the actual physics, mechanics of the string. Where am I going to put the string so that when relaxed, these just sit nice like this, but I can pull down and have the wing it's a little stuck. I can pull down and have this wing open this way. I'm gonna have to do some tests. You heard my mic rubbing up against my shirt the whole time. I just dropped it. With the frame successful, I'm going to add the second support I mentioned earlier back when I made my paper mock-up. The second PVC pipe is connected with 90-degree joints and PVC pipe glue in order to have a way to take these wings off my back easily. This glue smells really bad, but it's really strong. So let's move forward with making Aylin's back plate real quick. I did show you earlier my old back plate for Iron Inquisitor Kale. I traced that old back plate shape onto some paper, but it occurred to me that this one was designed to hold 4 wings and Aylin's only has to hold 2. So I can actually make it smaller. So I'm gonna sketch out on top of this a slightly smaller design. Then I'm gonna carve that shape into this new cincher board. Sintra is an awesome, sturdy material, but I only ever use it for cosplay pieces like wing harnesses or anything really structural. If I remember correctly, this material is very hard to cut. You can see just how many times I have to cut the same places over and over again to make it through this board. Yeah, this was just as hard to cut as I remember. This is also extremely sharp, so I'm probably gonna go at it with my Dremel and try to smooth out a lot of these corners. Here's the before and after dremeling down these sharp edges. And this harness needs some straps so that I can actually get it onto my body. So I take my Dremel again and I start cutting through to the other side to make holes big enough for my super heavy duty straps to go through. Holes that I've drilled into this back plate have been placed in strategic positions. This hole to this hole is basically going to be like a backpack strap, so these are going to be connected, and then these 2 holes here at the bottom are going to go around my ribs and have a buckle for connection. But before I can assemble this whole thing, I do need to make some changes. This is a little too flat. Luckily you can heat it up and shape it, so I'm going to very lightly curve it around the shape of my back, and I have a problem with this PVC pipe fitting. This is going to be attached to the back plate. It's going to be what these pipes slide into so I can take them on and off. But as it is now, they do not go all the way through this. They get stuck, and there's a little stopgap in there that is preventing it from going all the way down. So I have 2 options I'm thinking of. The first is to heat this up super warm and then sort of wiggle it around the PVC pipe so that it like opens up a little bit and I can slide this on a lot more easily. And the other option is to try to reach in here with my Dremel and shave down that stopgap. Once these 2 are fixed, I can actually start assembling it all together and do a test wear with the actual wing bones. Again, when heating up weird plastics, please wear a respirator. We love Britney Spears' Toxic, but we don't love toxic cosplay fumes. Heavy duty cord is my favorite when it comes to straps and belts and attachments. It's just so sturdy. You know it'll never break. I'm simply taking some measurements around my shoulders and around my chest, then threading those straps through the holes I made in my harness and hand sewing them into place. Then, with a quick release buckle provided by Lumen's Workshop, sewn in the middle, this harness is almost ready to go. Because first I gotta add those PVC pipe T-joints that I mentioned earlier. Unfortunately, none of my ideas actually worked. Heating them up did not give them enough flexibility to slide over the PVC pipe, and even dremeling them didn't take away enough material. So I said, you know what, screw this, and I cut a line straight down the side with the circle saw attachment on my Dremel, and that finally did the trick, and now these wing frames can slide into them easily. So all that's left is to use some teeny tiny 1/2-inch screws and a steel U-bracket to attach them. However, unfortunately screwing this in has squished the tube, and now my wing PVC pipe no longer fits inside. So, well, also the screws come out the back. Luckily, my solution was easy. I just simply went a size up in my steel U-brackets. With one on top and one on bottom, these are nice and secure on my harness. Since my wing frames can now slide into my harness, I think it's finally time to try them on for the first time to see just how good these wing bones look when I'm actually wearing them. Put my wings in.
Okay.
Okay. And they're in! They're wearable! Look at that! And they kinda, sorta actually move. With a couple little hiccups, and it's a little awkward, but they're mostly really good! And I can't wait to see the pulley mechanics in action. I'm really proud of these so far, but there is still quite a long ways to go. Now we enter wing testing phase. I gotta make these babies flap. I'm pretty sure I don't know how to do that. I do have this roll of twisted cord made out of nylon, and it seems pretty strong. My plan today is to try to make these wings open and close with a pulley mechanic. But I also don't understand physics or engineering, and I'm just gonna be making it up and hoping it works. I get really frustrated when things don't work the first time, despite the fact that I don't know what I'm doing. So I anticipate today not being very fun for me, but I gotta get it done. Why is it that we have to do a skill to be good at it? Why can I not just be good at it the first time? Let the testing begin. And honestly, I must have rolled pretty high on this intelligence check because it only took a couple of tries before I kinda nailed it. And I didn't really expect that to go so well, as you can tell. Listen, I know it's just a simple pulley, but I'm really excited that I got it to work, okay? And now I have to figure out how to get the string onto the inside of the PVC pipe so that it doesn't rub against those feathers. Alright, and then once I figure out the strings inside the pipes, I'll try it on and try the pulley and see if it works. I came up with this idea to push the cord through the pipes with a piece of long wire, but all this effort ended up being for naught. Hiding these pulley strings was the least of my problems at this point. I put it all together, and then I put this in my harness, and I stood up, and I pulled on my pulley system, and everything broke, and it doesn't work. For some reason, laying this flat on the ground and pulling the strings works great, and it opens. And I'm so happy with it. And then when I stand up and apply gravity, it doesn't work anymore. I'm too pretty to think about hard stuff like this. I did just browse around YouTube to see what other wing makers have done, and all of them are using pulley wheels. I'm gonna try that. I have to kind of disassemble and reassemble my wing frame, and I'm gonna add a wheel here at the top, a wheel at the bottom, and then a wheel at the shoulder piece. And I'm going to have the nylon cord like attached here, and so it'll come around these pulley systems, and that's supposed to help it work better. I'll need a lot less force to pull on the rope to open the wings, and it won't get caught on the PVC pipe. I'm worried that my screws aren't long enough too, and I'm gonna have to order new screws. I'm so annoyed. I just want things to work the first time I do them. But I'm problem solver or whatever. I'm sure like a bunch of you actually smart engineer type people were screaming at me in the comments. Polly, get a pulley wheel! Pulley wheels aren't super cheap, so I decided to make some really flimsy ones myself with scrap plastic and scrap EVA foam just to test to make sure the wheels would actually work before I spent money ordering real wheels. I also upgraded to a thicker nylon cord instead of that super thin one because it was cutting into my hands. Let's put this bad boy back together and run it through yet another test. Of course, with gravity this time, so I don't get my hopes up. It works. My test pulleys, I'm gonna get better pulleys, I promise, because these ones are extremely flimsy. I got some mail. Here is the little pulley wheel that I made, and here is the pulley wheel that I ordered from Amazon. The difference in quality is noticeable. In order to use my new pulley wheel, I am going to have to drill a bigger hole into my PVC pipe for this new screw to go into. So I'm going to do that real quick, and then I'm going to replace all my flimsy pulleys with these bad boys and do one more test of that wing movement.
The wheels aren't the only thing that's beefier. Look at these machine screws, damn! I'm gonna take apart my frame again and put her back together again. I can also drill extra holes in order to permanently attach this nylon cord by threading it through these holes and then hand sewing it together. One extra detail I added was the stop gap for my pulley cord. It's made out of Worbla along with a matching Worbla bead on the cord itself, so the whole string can't just fall off the frame when I'm not holding the cord. I'm reassembling my wing frame now and thinking about all the next steps that are required for this Dame Aylin cosplay, because there is still a lot to do. She has so much armor and this really cool scale mail bodysuit that I think I'm going to be making out of a scale printed fabric instead of out of EVA foam. And I really need to level up my sewing before I attempt this. So I turn to today's sponsor, Skillshare, because they have a ton of sewing classes. I took the class Hand Sewing Basics, Work Wonders with Fabric, Needle, and Thread by Bernadette Banner. So now I have a more thorough understanding of basic stitches like a running stitch or a felling stitch, instead of just making it up as I go along, which is what I'm used to. If you haven't heard about Skillshare, it is the largest online learning community with thousands of classes led by industry professionals. There are classes for animation, productivity, growing your first YouTube channel, sewing, and even cosplay. You know, just in case you were tired of the pure chaos of my videos and wanted to actually learn something from a pro about EVA foam or Worbla. And on top of individual classes, Skillshare also offers learning paths, which are hand-picked classes meant to be taken in order that build on one another. So now that I've started with the hand sewing basics, I can now follow a learning path. And then by the end of it, maybe I'll actually feel a little bit more confident in my sewing skills. The first 500 people who use the link in my bio will get a 1-month free trial of Skillshare. So whether you're a professional creative trying to add to your skill set or a hobbyist who just wants to learn something new, that link is in my bio for the first 500 people. Thank you to Skillshare for being my first ever YouTube sponsor, and thank you for teaching me something new. Now let's see if these wings actually work. And as it turns out, these pulley wheels truly were the savior for my articulated wings. I can pull down and they open up! They move! For realsies! Just look how big and open these wing bones look! And think about how cool they're gonna look when they're covered in feathers! Speaking of feathers, I think it's finally time to make a few of those. This giant roll of toilet paper isn't toilet paper at all. It's packing foam, aka the stuff that you wrap your fragile dishes in when packing them to move house. Just a little bit see-through, super lightweight, and really easy to cut and glue. I picked this as my feather material so I could keep my full finished wings as light as possible. I want to actually be able to wear them after all, like for a photo shoot or at a convention, unlike the centaur costume, which is too heavy to do anything in. The paper feather patterns you see me tracing were made from my giant wing pattern from earlier, just separated into each feather shape. Some feathers are giant and unique, but most of them are just the same pattern repeated a bunch of times. I wish I had actually counted just how many feathers I made for these wings, because there are a lot. Like a lot of feathers. I spent about 2 days straight from morning till night just tracing these patterns and cutting them out. Actually, you know what? Maybe I made too many. I cut out so many feathers today. Like, look at that.
Good morning. It's time to attach some feathers. I have already spent several hours toying with my wings and attachment ideas, and I'm struggling. From watching other cosplayers on YouTube make wings, the most common method seems to be attaching each individual feather along the frame on like a little pivot, and then all of those feathers are also attached to each other with a big string or fishing line so that they all fan out nicely. And then you make like a little cover for the top and attach any more feathers onto that cover, which is all well and good, except for the fact that my feathers are way too flimsy for that. Most of the time, those big overlapping feathers are made from really stiff fabric, EVA foam, wire, that kind of thing. And I also know that these aren't going to like gently like fold over each other. They want to get stuck to each other. So I've been tinkering. Instead of attaching every single feather individually, what if instead of attaching individual feathers, I had them attached to these big chunks on the wing frame, right? And these overlapped so that then the feathers would overlap. But this isn't really working how I want either. Right now they're made out of paper, but the final plan was to do a nice stiff plastic. But even then, they like are waving in the wind and like flopping around. They keep getting caught on the frame itself. This probably isn't gonna work. My other backup plan is I have to make all new feathers, and I don't have the materials for that. If I wanted to use craft foam, all of my craft foam is either black or gray, so I'd have to make all of it white with priming and painting, and that takes a lot of time. The other option is to do fabric and wire and a type of glue that stiffens the fabric, and I don't have any of that stuff either. I could just run to the home improvement store, but I don't have a car. So that's a $20 Uber there and back on top of all the cost of materials. Ugh. And then also making all new feathers. Okay, to be fair, I'd only have to remake the entire bottom layer of feathers, not all of the top layers. I could probably still use my flimsy little packing foam for the top feathers. I'm upsetty spaghetti. Alright, I'm not getting anything done by lying here and complaining about it. Hi, it's been a couple of hours, and I started making the feathers that I did not want to make. I'm following the YouTube video of another cosplayer who made Hawkgirl wings, and basically following her steps to the letter. Meaning, I have cut out a bunch of big rectangles from white fabric. I have cut long pieces of 16 gauge wire, and my hand hurts so bad. And I have prepped this stuff called Power Grab in my brand new caulk gun. Don't believe me? Look. Oh god, I'm a 12-year-old boy. Now I have to turn these big flat pieces of rectangle fabric into feathers with the wire, with this special glue that'll make it nice and stiff. Wait for it to dry for like 24 hours.
Hey!
Welcome to the origin story of my severe back pain.
This is gonna take forever.
Each of these fabric rectangles gets a heavy dose of Power Grab glue, spread out with a piece of scrap bone, then a wire added down the center as the feather bone, and sandwiched with another piece of white fabric. I went through 5 cans of this glue, and oh my god, my back hurts, but at least I have all new, nice, and stiff feathers. New day, same shirt. And don't you dare judge me. In fact, you should be proud of me, because I finished all of my new feathers. At least, I hope I did. I don't want to make any more of these. I still can't begin the assembly process, but what I can do is prep for it by adding teeny tiny screws all along the wing frame, and that's what the feathers are going to be attached to so that they can move and rotate. Basically, all along the frame here and here is what these feathers are going to be attached to. I lay all these feathers out slightly overlapping. That way I can calculate where to drill a hole in the frame for each wire to be attached to. And yeah, I actually did do real math, and it actually worked. For the first time ever in my life.
I was just dividing the length of the PVC pipe by the number of feathers, but still, I'm real proud of that working out. Just call me the Bard of Intelligence now. A bunch of teeny tiny screws are screwed into the frame, but only halfway. I made sure to leave a small gap so that the wing bone wire can wrap around it, and that is how the hinge will work for each individual feather. It's time to turn these plain floppy rectangles into actual feather shapes. I am simply going to be plopping them down onto my big pattern and cutting them into shape. Oh, I'm so nervous that this isn't gonna work. The giant paper wing pattern back from when I started this project is lying underneath the frame so that I can more accurately cut and shape these feathers. I can make sure they're the right length once attached to the frame and that they're all lying nicely according to the reference. Once I'm happy with their placement, I take some wire tools and start bending them around those screws and then cutting off the excess. However, having these feathers on hinges isn't enough for this giant wing to open and close nicely on its own. Each of these feathers needs to be tied together on one long string. That way they all fan out nicely when the wing opens fully. Without this string, the feathers will just obey gravity when I open the wing and flop downwards. The start of the string is attached directly to the frame, and then I have to cut 3 little holes into each feather. And for some reason, I decided to use my drill for this instead of just scissors, and this went about exactly how you'd expect. Uh-oh. Uh-oh. But there is no permanent damage. I go feather by feather and knot it around the wire, carefully spacing out each one as I go. It took a couple of tries tying and untying the string just to get the right spread of these feathers once the wing is open. Oh my god, that hurts. Ugh. I also strengthened my harness off camera by adding a second T-joint for these wings to slide into. Finally, with some feathers actually on these wings, let's run another test. That's tough. That is really hard to pull. It sucks. But it opens and it looks really cool. It's just really uncomfortable. Look at that. It's just really heavy. Yeah, the very first feather, the big one, that one's the ugliest. And it's getting a little floppy. You're right, it is, I think, too heavy. I might go in and remove some smaller feathers. I've made some off-camera changes since trying on my wing last night because that thing was really heavy. Painfully heavy. I ended up taking out a couple of feathers. I don't think it's going to make that much of a difference, but anything I can do to reduce the weight is a good thing. I went in and I actually retied the string because I wasn't super happy with the flap. And then I added a second string at the top here to have a little bit more support. And then I ended up gluing down this feather to hide the top PVC pipe. I am so very nervous about the weight of both of these wings on my harness, and especially nervous about the draw power required to open the wings, because them just sitting on my back is quite heavy, but then I have to add pressure and weight to open the wings. The whole point of using that packing foam to make my feathers was that it would be nice and lightweight, and then I went and ruined that plan. Now I'm going to start adding a little cape made out of fabric for the top that I can start attaching the second and third layer of feathers to. Then, that should be it actually. This fabric is for the second and third and fourth layer of feathers to be glued onto. It will just drape over the frame and be hot glued down in key points. I laid it over my whole wing and traced out the shape I wanted while the wing was fully extended. I cut more feather shapes into the bottom end so it will blend in with the more natural shape of those feathers. Doing a quick test, and you can kind of see on my face that I'm actually starting to get nervous because the more I add to these wings, the less I like them. But I keep pushing forward, hoping that this is just the ugly stage and the end product will be worth it. Time for the second layer of feathers. At least all of that time spent cutting out this foam wasn't completely wasted. Just like the bottom layer, I'm laying them down slightly overlapping to mimic real feathers. These don't need to be on their own hinge attachment like the bottom layer, thanks to this big fabric piece, so they just get attached with hot glue. So here's the thing. I really hate it. I hate the way it looks when it's folded. It like bunches up and you can even still see the wheels. When it's unfolded it looks fine. If I'm going to be wearing this around and taking photos, most of the time it's going to be folded like this. And these feathers, they suck. Like, I'm not going to start from scratch, right? Am I? No, I'm way too far. I'm way too far to start from scratch. And I still have to add like more feathers, right? It's not just the second row, it's like a third and a fourth row. So it's just gonna get both here and more. I'm gonna keep going, even though I kinda hate it. And I will consider potentially making a new second pair of wings with an entirely different technique that probably won't be articulated because this has been a hassle. I really made a whole moving centaur and hated every second of it and decided, you know what, I could do that again. Come here. What's up? Oh. The puppy visit gave me so much positive energy that I really needed to finish these wings, even if I was kind of hating the result so far. So I got right to it, laying and gluing and testing and more gluing. This one wing took me ages to complete and I hadn't even started on the second wing yet. And on top of that, I hadn't added a single feather to the backside of these wings. They were literally still bare bones. Honestly, I was maybe at my lowest at this point of the build. I had put so much time and money and energy and materials into these wings, only for them to end up kinda ugly. Testing and gluing and more testing, and they don't look like how I wanted at all. But we've made it this far, haven't we? Wire cuts and hot glue burns and harness bruises. Dame Aylin went through centuries of torture, being murdered over and over again, resurrected over and over again. So you know what? I can glue on some stupid feathers to some stupid wings and suck it up, and show you what all of this hard work actually amounts to. Even if I hate them, I did make something.
Are you burning yourself?
What's up?
You burning yourself?
Yeah.
So, let me show you. Ooh, these suck. Ooh, they're heavy. Well, here they are. Not actually done. Didn't actually put any feathers on the back of these wings. I also clearly don't have the armor that goes up here. And that's because I've already decided I'm not gonna use these in the final cosplay. Actually, you know what? I'm getting real tired of wearing these. Let's have this wrap up elsewhere, shall we? Dame Aylin may be indomitable. She may be a giant, 7-foot-tall, lesbian, daughter of the moon goddess, who can literally lift me over her head and snap my spine. She may be the baddest baddie in all of the Forgotten Realms, but I am just a simple little cosplay lady. Even though I did really try to make proper working wings, they just aren't. I mean, they do look pretty cool, and they do move, and they are huge, and they kind of look like how I want them to look. But if I'm just being honest, there is no way I can wear these to a convention, and probably no way I can wear these to a photo shoot either. I just don't have the strength. The pull power required to open these bad boys is just beyond me. I really thought using like a lightweight packing foam would solve all my problems, but as it turns out, they don't make very sturdy feathers. And then when you start adding all those metal pulley wheels, as it turns out, that adds a couple pounds too. Ugh. Maybe I am just giving up too early, but I also don't really want to get lost in the sunken cost fallacy. I don't need to be trapped by these wings just because I spent a bunch of time on them. I can start over. So I'm going to start over. In fact, I am going to be making the entirety of Dame Aylin's armor, and I'm going to be making lighter, better wings for her. They probably won't move like these ones, but if I can wear them, then that's a win. I would love to hear your solutions to these wings. If you were making them, what you would do. Leave me a comment down below. Or you can just tell me about your Tav and who you're romancing in Baldur's Gate. Please stick around if you would like to see the rest of this Dame Aylin cosplay build. In fact, I've already started on her helmet and her bodysuit, and I am really excited about how those are turning out. Big thank you to Lumen's Workshop again for sponsoring this entire cosplay. I have links down below to their products, and also a huge thank you to Skillshare for sponsoring this video. Now be gone. I must take succor in Isabel's body and words. Bye!